and we now commence in public session. I have apologies here received from Deputy Olivia Mitchell, Deputy Sean Crowe, Dan Neville and Senator David Norris. Okay, draft minutes of the meeting the 17th of June 2015. They've been circulated to members. Are the minutes of that meeting agreed? Senator Daly.
Chairman. Just in relation to the correspondence we received from the family of Ibrahim Halawi, and I know that Amnesty are coming in to talk about their annual report, but also in relation to the discrepancies between what we have been told by our Department of Foreign Affairs and information that the Halawi family have given us regarding the torture of Ibrahim and the lack of medical treatment and assistance that he received, and also the conditions in the prison. And I know that you have asked the Egyptian authorities that we would go out and visit him, and I don't know, is there an update on that? But I suppose the concerning issue on this is that there is a Canadian national who was released having been put on trial, and then he was not found guilty.
I don't want to have a discussion now, because we'll have it on correspondence.
But what I would ask the Chairman to get is a brief on the fact that he is actually released on bail. Now, he's released on bail terms that he must remain in Egypt. He is still in Egypt. He cannot get a passport.
Yeah, but I don't want to go into in-depth discussion. We
were told that Ibrahim couldn't be released.
The minutes now we're speaking on, not on the actual discussion.
But what I'm asking is, what is the situation in relation to, like, with the minutes were agreed, but it was also agreed that we would get on to the Egyptians. Have they come back to us?
No.
And secondly, there's another item on the minutes in relation to the Justice for the Forgotten and the Relatives for Justice and the Good Friday Agreement Committee, and whether or not we're going to have a joint meeting with them, because obviously it was brought up in the Dáil yesterday, and the Taoiseach was over in London, and I congratulated him on releasing the files in relation to the King's Mills massacre and whatever information we have, but we're still looking for the British Prime Minister to hand over files in relation to the Dublin Monaghan bombings, and we don't seem to be any nearer getting to the truth of that issue, or whether or not we're going to get the files at all, despite resolutions from all parties. Okay,
two issues there, Senator Daly, thanks for that. I'm sorry, I just didn't want to get into in-depth discussion at this stage because it's in the correspondence. In relation to the Halawi case, as you know, we have no updates since last week. We've been on to the department, we've been in touch, we have met the Egyptian ambassador personally in relation to this request, which was brought forward by the committee here, and we have had no correspondence since. But we'll follow up on that maybe before the next meeting. Is that okay?
Yeah.
In relation to the Relatives for Justice, I understand the Good Friday Agreement are meeting tomorrow on this, and they'll be discussing it. So both clerks have been asked to as requested. So we hope to have something back tomorrow on that from their point of view as well. They are the main committee for this, and obviously we have, as requested, the committee have expressed an interest in this. So we'll discuss it with them tomorrow. Okay, after they've discussed it at their meetings.
That we will work jointly with them in relation to this, but I would contest the statement that they're the main committee. They're not. This is an issue between the Irish government and the British government.
Yeah,
so
but
it's a matter primarily.
Okay, let you speak.
Matter primarily, in my opinion, for the Foreign Affairs Committee, and it's an absolute scandal. And I concur with my colleague Senator Daly. I would compliment the fact that we've dealt with the King's Mills documents, but it's a disgrace that the British have hidden documents, which in fact means they're still participating in collusion, because the definition of collusion means that as you continue to deny documentation and conceal evidence with regard to atrocities and terrorism, and this was state terrorism by the British, you are a participant and you're as guilty of collusion as those who participated in the actual bombings. So I think we should be unequivocal about this. There is a unanimous decision of Dáil Éireann with regard to this issue, which has been ignored by the British now for some 10 years. Totally unacceptable.
All right, no one is doubting your sentiments, but we had agreed that we'd let the Good Friday Agreement discuss this first, and we talked to them in relation to it. They're meeting tomorrow. Okay. Two clerks will meet and we'll discuss it then. Senator, or Deputy Byrne, did you want to come in there?
I'm afraid I don't know.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said you wanted to come in. Sorry.
No, I didn't.
Okay, so
it would be on the agenda for as an agenda item, so that we don't have to take it up on the minutes of our next meeting. And that in the meantime, when the clerk finds out tomorrow, that we would all get an email.
We'll put it on the correspondence next week, so that it's on the correspondence, because we will have a reply updated on that for you.
If I could just finish, that in the meantime, when the clerk is informed of the decision of the Good Friday Agreement Committee tomorrow, that's conveyed to us tomorrow as soon as the clerk is aware of it.
Okay. Okay, no problem on that, Chair. No, we just need to be careful on this, because there are two committees here, and we certainly don't want to be overlapping or going down the same road as they're going down on the same issue. That's all I'm saying to you. So we'll have a written correspondence from the clerk.
I won't do it. Okay, can I just say that the murder of 34
okay, we don't want to go into the subject now. We're discussing
Irish citizens
we're not discussing
with the collusion of the British establishment is unacceptable.
Okay,
and is
that's
much more
fine.
important.
You've said that before.
Is much more important.
But we're not going into discussion on it now at this stage.
Is much more important than the niceties of what operates between two committees, in my opinion.
Please.
Let's put our citizens first for a change, rather than politicians' egos on committees.
Okay, now, Senator Mullins.
That the Good Friday Agreement and this committee would meet jointly to discuss this particular issue. Did I take that up, Ron?
Well, I think we have to look at the remit of the Good Friday Agreement and what their subject matters discuss. And we certainly don't want to be. I mean, if that happens, it happens. But I mean, if they're not anxious that we get into it, I mean, and they want to do it, some of these members. I mean, you can attend the Good Friday Agreement, but I'm not ruling anything out at this stage until we see what happens that committee tomorrow. Okay?
Because obviously, it's an ongoing issue.
We'll discuss it under correspondence again next week. Okay.
Sorry, I'm asking, Chairman, and I'll put it as a proposal if it's not accepted. It's a very simple request that it's an agenda item for next week.
Well, that's up to you if you want to put it in as an item next week, but I mean, at the moment, there will be a written... At the moment, Senator Walsh, at the moment there's going to be a written correspondence back.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm proposing formally now
Mr. Chairman.
that this will be an agenda item for next week. And I intend to press it. It's a reasonable request.
Okay.
And I'll press it to a vote in the event of it not being accepted.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just as a matter of order, this refers to the work which another committee is engaged at the present time.
Yes.
And while this committee would have some common ground with that committee, we do not have the right to dictate to the other committee the matters that they should discuss or we should discuss. So with due respect to the speakers, I would suggest that we wait and see what the Good Friday committee has to say and what their intentions are in regard to it. It would be entirely without precedent to overreach the work of another committee, regardless of whether or not we have some common ground, and that's all standing practice in the House.
And that's all I would ask you to do, Senator Mullins, or Senator Walsh. Just wait and see what happens Good Friday Agreement tomorrow. We don't want to be going into loggerheads with the Good Friday Agreement on this. And I have no problem putting it on for next week, to discuss it next week, but I would ask you just to wait and see what happens tomorrow. I mean, that was really what we had agreed, and they're not meeting until tomorrow, okay?
First of all, no, I don't accept that. The request that came in writing was to this committee. It is an international matter between two sovereign governments. We referred it to the Good Friday Committee, right? We referred it to them, rather than maybe have them feeling that in some way we ignored a remit that they have. But primarily, it is a function, in my opinion, of this committee. We referred it on the basis that we would meet jointly with them if that was their wish. If not, that we would meet on it ourselves. That's my understanding.
Exactly.
What I'm looking for is that it be on the agenda next week, so that we don't have a debate like this under the minutes next week. I think it's more important than just an item that should be taken up under the minutes. And all I'm asking is that next week, on the agenda, we will have that particular
issue. There's no problem putting it on the agenda, but I think we need to talk to our friends in the Good Friday Agreement
I'm not
and look at their remit and see what the story is, okay? Because we get requests all the time to meet us, and as Deputy Durkan has said, they may not be matters for our committee. Take, for instance, the TTIP. That's a matter for the Enterprise Committee. So it's areas like that. So, I mean, we have to distinguish between each committee, what committee does.
But this is primarily our committee.
If the Good Friday Agreement committee want to debate this jointly, then we'll see what the story is, and we'll come back to you next week, and we'll put it on the agenda. There's no problem.
Collusion has nothing to do with the Good Friday Agreement. Collusion occurred during the 70s and 80s, with the British heavily involved with loyalist paramilitaries.
But it's all to do with Northern Ireland. It's not a matter of bilateral relations.
Good Friday Committee is to do with the Good Friday Agreement.
I think we need to be careful on that. That's all I'm saying to you. So we'll discuss it next week after the Good Friday Agreement meet tomorrow. Okay. Is that okay?
And it'll be on the agenda.
Yeah,
it'll be on the agenda.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I accept that. That's grand. Thank you for that.
When yourself and the other chairman are discussing it, and maybe the clerks as well, in relation to that, Dáil motions have been passed, Shannon motions have been passed about the release of the files in relation to the Dublin and Monaghan bombings. I think it would be appropriate that we would have a joint hearing with those who have done programmes, RT, Panorama and others, but also that we should look at going to the relevant committee jointly, the Foreign Affairs Committee and the Good Friday Agreements, over to Westminster, to whichever committee is appropriate, to bring our concerns and our demands in relation to the release of those files to whatever people in Westminster have to hear it and whatever committee has to hear it, because we have had motions passed and we have had nothing but platitudes from the British government, and it's time that the MPs heard about what their government has been involved in relation to the
It's
files.
going to be on next week. Okay. So we'll discuss it next week one way or the other. And okay. It is an important subject. Nobody's dismissing it, but I think that we need the appropriate committee and forum for dealing with it, and look at what remit each of the committees have. Okay.
But I would ask.
Okay. I'm leaving the matter. Yeah.
I don't want to have this debate with you next week. I'm just asking it in the meantime.
But should we have where it's on the agenda next week?
Sorry, yeah, I know that. Yeah, but I would ask you to consider. I mean, it's an international issue between Ireland and Britain, and effectively I could argue the case, but I'm not, that it has nothing to do with the Good Friday Agreement committee. But, you know, if we deal with it together, I'm very happy with that.
Okay.
But I'm not happy with a situation where the Foreign Affairs Committee is not involved. Okay,
we'll deal with it next week. Okay. Is that agreed? Okay. The minutes agreed to the last, okay? Okay. Okay, unless there are matters rising, these minutes will now proceed with the main business of the meeting. Okay, so today we have a meeting in public session with Mr. Martin Murray and Stephanie Fitzgerald-Smith of Asian Masters to discuss Ireland's trade with ASEAN countries. You're both very welcome to our meeting. As you know, we've already held meetings with other stakeholders in this report, which we are putting together in relation to trade with the ASEAN regions and the potential that exists for trade with that region, which has a population of over 600 million people. So the format of today's meeting is as usual. We'll have an opening statement from Mr. Murray, and then we'll take questions from the members. Okay, so before I begin, I want to remind members, witnesses and those in the public gallery to ensure that their mobile phones are switched off completely for the duration of the meeting, as they do cause interference, even in silent mode, with the recording equipment in the committee rooms. Also, in advance of the hearing's today's presentation, I remind members of the long-standing parliamentary practice to the effect that they should not comment on, criticise or make charges against any person or body outside the Houses or an official either by name or such a way as to make him or her identifiable. By virtue of Section 17(2)(1) of the Defamation Act 2009, witnesses are protected by absolute privilege in respect of their evidence to the Joint Committee. If they are directed by the Chairman to seize given evidence on a particular matter and they continue to do so, they are entitled thereafter only to qualified privilege in respect of their evidence. They are directed that only evidence connected with the subject matter of today's proceedings to be given, and they are asked to respect the parliamentary practice that, where possible, they should not criticise or make charges against a person or entity by name him or such a way as to make him or her identifiable. Okay, Mr. Murray.
Thank you, Chairman.
Make your presentation, please.
Good morning, everyone. With your permission, we've sent a briefing document which I'll go through, and then my colleague Stephanie Fitzgerald-Smith, who's our Director of Communications, and I myself would be happy to take any comments or questions from the members, if that's okay. Thank you very much. So, without further ado, we've sent you the briefing in advance regarding the theme of expanding Ireland's trade with ASEAN. And our focus today will be on suggested solutions to clear problems that exist in Ireland's engagement with ASEAN. We welcome the opportunity to give a briefing to the committee in its deliberations on expanding Ireland's trade with ASEAN. If I may read through the document, and then my colleague Stephanie will take any questions or comments after. Though starting from a low base, there is enormous market potential for Ireland in the key economic global growth area of Asia. Though Europe and the US are now understandably the key priority markets, the Asian Development Bank estimates that Asia will double its share of global GDP to 52% by 2050. Currently, a third of global wealth and two-thirds of the global population are in Asia. ASEAN alone has a combined population of 625 million, 8.8% of the world's population, with 3.49% in Indonesia alone. Ireland needs to establish a strong presence in Asia and ASEAN for the future integrity of the Irish economy. Asia Matters would like to advise the committee on the significant progress made since last presenting to the committee on the 30th of January 2013, an update on recommendations to expand trade with the broader Asian region with a specific focus on ASEAN. First of all, may I explain some background to Asia Matters for members who may not fully understand who we are and what we do. Asia Matters was founded to fulfil the need for Ireland to have a dedicated Asia Institute focused on business. It works collectively for the national good as part of Team Ireland with all key stakeholders. Mr. Alan Kelly, TD, Minister for the Environment, Community and Local Government, has commended the work of Asia Matters as a valuable asset for Ireland in developing dynamic business links and informed understanding between Asia and Ireland. Asia Matters is a not-for-profit, non-political economic institute based in Dublin, dedicated to developing Ireland-Asia business relations, and acts as an articulate voice registering Irish public policy within an EU-Asia context. As an educational think tank, Asia Matters works in close partnership with the government, business and academic stakeholders in Ireland, the EU and across Asia. The chairman is Alan Dukes, former Irish Minister of Finance, and the executive director is myself, and separate to Asia Matters, I have the privilege of being the Honorary Consul of the Republic of Indonesia in Ireland. Asia Matters has shown a strong commitment to ASEAN since its foundation and was officially launched the 10th of May 2012 in the embassy, the then embassy of the Philippines in Dublin. With a country focus on ASEAN plus 5, China, Japan, Korea, India, Mongolia, Asia Matters has good working relations with the 10 ASEAN countries, Brunei Darussalam, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand and Vietnam. Though clearly these countries would have different priority rankings for Irish trade subject to sectors of interest. Asia Matters provides a vital role in supporting Ireland by facilitating the development of enhanced partnership by Irish interests in EU-Asia business and cultural relations through engaging with a high-level Asian peer community in business, government and academic sectors. As Ireland develops its partnership engagement with Asia, Asia Matters works with Irish diplomatic missions and business development agencies to raise awareness of the vast opportunities in key Asian markets. Asia Matters delivers essential business learning for key stakeholders through briefings, conferences, policy research and publications. To date, it has organised 51 briefings, 22 conferences and 3 Ireland-Asia Business Yearbooks, the annual book of reference for Asia-Ireland trade relations, the recent edition of which you have a hard copy in front of you, includes commentary from An Taoiseach and 5 Irish government ministers, along with profiles of the 10 ASEAN countries, reflecting the collective and good partnership working relations. 2014 was a pivotal year for the work of the Institute. Asia Matters commissioned a report on unlocking Asia's trade potential for Ireland with economist Mark Coleman, which provides a benchmark for Ireland's Asia engagement and maps opportunities for future trade and investment. This report outlines the need to create a much broader awareness of Brand Ireland in targeted sectors in key Asian markets, focus our market engagement in 5 sectors where Ireland has competitive advantage, food and agri-tech, education and skills, tourism, ICT and international financial services. Promote Ireland as the Asian business valley for Europe and expand the role of existing multinational companies to take on Asia responsibilities. Comprehensively update our Asia trade strategy through collective stakeholder engagement to maximise the business potential of key relations. Build Asia competencies through educational programmes and graduate young professional placements. Not stated in the briefing, but I would say it's very unfortunate that the excellent Irish FOSS programme in Japan and indeed the Farmley Fellowship programme based in Singapore have now both ceased. At EU level, Asia Matters took its signature EU-Asia Top Economist Round Table series, which we call TERT, to Beijing for the first time and ran its second in the series in Tokyo. The events reached an audience of over 500 key delegates, featured CEO-level speakers from top companies such as Airbus, Nokia, People's Bank of China, BASF, BNP Paribas, Nissan and Philips. Asia Matters has now completed 6 successful TERTs, establishing Ireland as a key player in EU-Asia trade relations. 2015, the Year of the Sheep, looks set to be a landmark year for Ireland's engagement with its partners across Asia. On the domestic front, Ireland is projected to be the fastest growing economy in the EU, following years of contraction. This growth will breed positivity internally and drive Ireland's positive brand in external markets. The year began on a positive note for Ireland's Asia engagement with the Global Island, Ireland's Foreign Policy for a Changing World Conference in Dublin Castle on 12th to 14th of January. On the invitation of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Asia Matters took part in the forum and contributed our views and feedback from our network to upping Ireland's engagement with Asia. Again, key themes echo those highlighted by Asia Matters in our recent economic report. Again, the 5 sectors as listed, essentially education and global talent, food and agri-tech, tourism, ICT, international financial services. The event was an excellent initiative, allowing government, business and civil society stakeholders to discuss possible paths forward to progress Ireland-Asia engagement. The team at Asia Matters spends a third of the year in Asia. We deem it very important, hence our name Asia Matters, to be in Asia and to keep up to date with what's happening in the ground with local partners. To date in 2015, the team has visited 7 ASEAN cities from a total of 13 Asian cities visited, working closely, of course, with Irish diplomatic missions and Team Ireland on the ground. Asia Matters looks forward to continuing its role in boosting Ireland-Asia engagement in 2015 through its flagship Asia Business Week Ireland and other events and publications. And you have a summary of the Asia Business Week Ireland, which will shortly take place in July. Again, we're focusing on the 5 key areas of growth. And in Asia Business Week, again, the collective approach, we have 6 Irish government ministers, 1 European Commissioner, and 30 government agencies and business organisations supporting. In relation to ASEAN, a major development for 2015 is the ASEAN Economic Community. AEC is due to come into force at the end of the year under Malaysia's chairmanship. Significantly, the EU and ASEAN have announced the resumption of their FTA talks, with stock taking planned also for the end of the year. Following a 7th TERT in Dublin in July and an 8th TERT in Tokyo in November, Asia Matters plans to bring its signature EU-Asia TERT to ASEAN in 2015 to continue to brand Ireland as an integral part of Europe and a trusted business partner for Asia. If I may move on now to the update on the recommendations previously made to the committee on 30th of January 2013, evidently taking into account developments in the last 2 years. We are making a total of 10 recommendations, and again we have a summary document. Essentially they are as follows. Number 1, seek creative ways to overcome resource challenge to bridge the competitive gap to drive Irish business with Asia. The context, Ireland has started its engagement with Asia and ASEAN relatively late compared with other countries. For cultural and geographic reasons, Ireland has largely no historical relations with Asia, though equally no colonial baggage. The shining light in the relationship is the number of Irish and religious orders who went to Asia as educators, contributing to some of the finest academic institutions and educating some of the most talented young people in Asia, a number of whom have gone on to assume leadership roles within their countries. Asia is only now beginning to feature on the Irish business radar. The Irish government is taking the lead in developing relations, yet compared to competitors, Ireland has limited presence and resources, so it is critical to see creative ways such as private-public partnerships to overcome resource and other challenges to bridge this competitive gap to drive Irish business with Asia. A good example of this collective partnership was in 2012, when the APIBF Business Directory, which again the members have in front of you, was produced in Ireland by myself and Mr. Peter Ryan, now Ireland's Consul General in Hong Kong and Macau, with the support of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. This was an initiative raised by the Ireland-Japan Chamber of Commerce, so a good example of both sides working together for the greater good. Within ASEAN, Ireland is primarily concentrating its resources on Singapore, followed by Malaysia. This is very understandable, of course. But from this solid foundation, enhanced by the new missions in Indonesia and Thailand, we need to expand the greater targeted regional presence to capitalise on the growing opportunities in Indonesia, Thailand, the Philippines, Vietnam and Myanmar. There could be a valuable role here for Team Ireland graduate or young professionals in Asia programmes as recommended in the Asia Matters Economic Report of October 2014. Again, Team Ireland in Asia works best, which we've seen on the ground, when all agency and chamber representation is in one building, the same location as the Embassy of Ireland, which is normally called Ireland House, with the Irish ambassador leading the team. Tokyo is a very good example of how this is done effectively. Ireland needs to find a cost and time-effective way to create a local presence to show that we are serious and drive business for Ireland. For example, in Indonesia, the Indonesian government has allocated 20% of its annual budget to education. Indonesia is sending students to Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the US and UK, but not Ireland. If we were to allocate an education attaché to the Irish Embassy in Jakarta, she or he could fully focus on closing off a government-to-government MOU on education, which would then lead to significant numbers of Indonesian students coming to Ireland. Such an appointment could involve secondment from an Irish government department or agency or educational institution, and or could be co-funded or indeed fully funded by the education sector in Ireland. Irish education experts in Asia with clear competence could also be ideal candidates to fill the role. Second recommendation, to open an Irish embassy in Manila and encourage ASEAN countries to open an embassy in Dublin. Asia Matters had recommended in the prior 2013 briefing to open new diplomatic missions in Jakarta, Bangkok and Manila. It is significant to see that the new missions in Jakarta and Bangkok, led by very senior Irish diplomats, are already creating a very positive impact on the ground as focal points for Ireland, which will drive business development. It is clear that in the near future, both Indonesia and Thailand plan to reciprocally open embassies in Ireland, creating a virtuous circle which will encourage more ASEAN countries to open an embassy in Ireland. Currently, there's only one ASEAN embassy in Dublin, which is Malaysia. It is clear that a London-based embassy responsible for Ireland, in addition to the UK, is stretched to commit the time and resources that it would wish to Ireland. And with the best will in the world, and we're very friendly and work closely with the ASEAN ambassadors in London, they're sincerely committed to Ireland, but it's a question of time and resources. Vietnam is a particular example of a country that has significantly committed both time and resources to Ireland, and with our effective ambassador on the ground, we now have a very positive situation where Vietnam has moved from an aid to a trade country relationship. It is now a very important priority to open an embassy in Manila because of the importance of the Philippines and the need for local engagement with the Asian Development Bank to ensure that Ireland receives its share of ADB contracts. I visited the ADB recently in Manila and came across one particular opportunity for Ireland in the food and agri-tech sector. It was a contract of a value of $2 million US, and the person in charge was not aware of Ireland's expertise in food and agri-tech. And this is the kind of opportunity that local people on the ground can unearth. Obviously, I reported back to the relevant agencies here in Ireland. Third recommendation, update Ireland's Asia strategy for the next 5 to 15 years with specific plans for the next 3 to 5 years through collective engagement with key stakeholders in Ireland and Asia. The context is the original Asia Trade Strategy 1999 to 2009 created an excellent focus. Although Asia has been incorporated in Irish government reports and agency strategies, along with a number of key bilateral agreements and economic forums, there's a need for a comprehensive, updated national Asia trade strategy. Recommendation number 4, appoint a senior political administration figure to coordinate a national Asia trade strategy. Again, Asia Matters in 2013 made this recommendation to the committee. This political administration figure, for example, a Minister of State, could work for Ireland within the EU-Asia context and engage with all government departments, agencies and key external stakeholders to coordinate trade, education, tourism and cultural activities. The highly impressive work of Minister Simon Harris, with special responsibility for international banking, including the IFSC, and his leadership in creating the IFS Strategy 2020, with a clear objective to create 10,000 further jobs in Ireland's financial services sector, is an excellent role model for this. Recommendation 5, support the development of direct air links between Dublin and Asian capitals. The context, regarding ASEAN, Bangkok is the obvious choice to progress with, as almost 70,000 Irish visitors fly into Bangkok annually. Dublin currently has no direct flights to Asia. By comparison, and we do understand the geographies involved, Helsinki has over 20 direct flights to Asia weekly. And in fact, Finnair started its first direct flight to Japan in 1983. So competitively, there's a job of work to be done here. 6th recommendation, move to online to ensure a positive visa process for ASEAN business visitors and tourists. The current visa process is cumbersome, time-consuming and expensive. Whilst, of course, security protocols must be respected in terms of who is approved to enter Ireland, scanned passports and other e-friendly processes should be enhanced for bona fide applicants, particularly when applying from other countries or countries within which the physical distance is quite substantial. 7th recommendation, create a 3-year forward plan of ministerial visits to key ASEAN cities and reciprocally seek to invite targeted ASEAN peer leaders to visit Ireland. The context, currently the priority focuses on China, understandably, with a limited amount of high-level visits to or from ASEAN. As with all of Asia, government is highly respected, and enhanced visits by senior Irish figures will be a clear driver of business partnership opportunities. Forward planning could also allow maximisation of business impact and indeed create a multiplier effect. For example, when in Singapore, a senior official could visit the Asia-Europe Foundation, of which Ireland is a member, which is very active in the educational and cultural spheres. Given how embedded Japanese business is across ASEAN, and indeed the pending role of the new China-led Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, in which ASEAN will be a key focus, third-party country visits by ministers could also be maximised to explore how Ireland could partner together with these countries in the ASEAN markets. Recommendation 8. Follow the lead of IDA Ireland and Enterprise Ireland by employing Asian staff in key government departments. Currently, Chinese and Japanese staff within these Irish agencies play a very valuable role. We believe that there's an opportunity, understanding the cost limitations and the resource structures, to have perhaps some short fixed-term exchanges, interim staff from peer agencies in Asian countries, and this could greatly enhance understanding of ASEAN. Recommendation number 9, create ASEAN language content on websites for Irish government departments and trade agencies. Again, following the similar logic of the internships and exchanges with ASEAN people, here there's an expression which I'm sure the members are familiar with, which is you buy in your own language, you sell in the customer's language. If we are serious about selling to ASEAN, we must have content in their languages. Tourism would be an obvious focus. Recommendation number 10, which is the final recommendation, create multiple friendship agreements between cities, educational institutes and cultural bodies between Ireland and ASEAN. The context here is giving the resource limitations to create friendship agreements rather than twinning links around specific projects, they could be short-term, such as a Dublin-Bangkok direct flight, and create a national plan to twin Irish educational institutions and cultural bodies with Asian counterparts to enhance people-to-people relations. This should be fixed time and target focus. In the educational sector, it's obvious at the moment that in some cases educational institutions are essentially selling the same products within the same markets, while other markets are not being targeted. So there's obviously opportunity to develop this. The conclusion, Ireland needs to appoint a senior figure, such as a Minister of State, to consult with and create an updated Asia trade strategy until 2020, which coordinates the work of government and non-government stakeholders in a collective manner to overcome resource challenges so that Team Ireland can work better together on clear deliverables in key markets to bridge the competitive gap in Asia and essentially punch above our weight. As the Irish expression goes, Ní nart go cuirla céile. There is no strength without unity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murray. Thank you very much for your very comprehensive presentation here and recommendations as well. And it'll be quite useful to us in our report. Okay, we'll go over to Deputy Brendan Smith.
Chairman, I give way to Senator Jim Walsh. I was late getting here.
Okay, Senator Walsh.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, could I just compliment Mr. Murray and your organisation. We get very many presentations and submissions made to us. And on this issue, in fact, I think this might be the third time we've actually addressed this particular topic. I have to say, and I don't normally, I wouldn't have a reputation of patronising people, but I would think that it's probably one of the best and most focused presentations that we've seen, with very clear recommendations and clear arguments underpinning the recommendations. So I'd just like to say that initially. Can I just ask a few questions in relation to it, if you don't mind? I note that on page 2, you mentioned that it's ASEAN plus 5, and you mentioned the 5. I also note that recently Taiwan has made overtures, I think, about having greater direct links to Ireland, and I'm just wondering why they would be excluded from, your particular countries of remit. And would you have a view on that? I know there are some political sensitivities with China, but you might like to comment maybe in relation to it. I was interested to hear your comment that the FOSS programme in Japan, and I think a fellowship programme you said ceased. Yes. Could you give us just a little bit more information on those, just succinctly maybe, as to the benefits of them and the reasons, in your understanding, as to why they were discontinued? With regard to Brand Ireland, and we had this debate, I think, previously as well from a number of people, what do you think is the best way for us to harness an awareness and create a brand for Ireland? I mean, we're a small island sometimes. We forget it. Maybe we've influence beyond our size. But in many parts of Asia, if you go there, you find that there's not a lot known about Ireland once you start talking to the populace generally. But there seems to be a connection with our music and our musicians and our bands. I presume those who follow sport would have some knowledge of some of our sports personnel, particularly perhaps at the moment, the fact that we're very prominent in the golf arena. Riverdance, I know, created quite an impact. I'm wondering, how can we harness, how could the state utilise, if you like, the awareness of that and get the attachment to Ireland? Because sometimes the link with Ireland is not known to the people who are aware of these particular bands or individuals. Is language an issue? You did mention about competencies in the educational programme, and you also mentioned about culture there as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, you did raise, you raised further on, I think, in the recommendations with regard to what we would call here maybe the one-stop shop of having an Ireland building. And I think you mentioned Japan as being a good example in that regard. Have you had discussions with the department in this regard, Department of Foreign Affairs, and what responses are you getting? Because these strikes me as very good recommendations, in fact, that perhaps we should be following up on with the department. Obviously there's synergies to be got from having people working together where the symbiosis is greater than the individual intentions in that. Other than that, I just quickly run through. I mean, I just felt all your recommendations were had a great deal of merit and were ones that we should be following up on. You mentioned about the food and agri-tech, which you brought to the attention. You know, and it is a little extraordinary, all right, that one of our strong industries, and indeed when a committee was there in Singapore recently, we became aware of particularly the Kerry Group and indeed others who have an involvement in Malaysia. And it's significant that the ADB, the Asian Development Bank, were unaware of our food and agri-tech expertise and indeed our leadership in that area. And you reported back to the department, I presume. Be interested to see what follow-up, did they come back to you and what follow-up was given in that regard. So I'll leave it at that, and the rest of my colleagues will have. One final thing, actually, which just occurs to me, and I'm strong on it. You mentioned about a move to online to ensure positive visa process for ASEAN business visitors and tourists. We've got this from a number of people that have come in from some of those countries. Should we not be joining Schengen at this stage and forget about any inhibitions with Britain? Let them do what they want, but act independently. Is it to our disadvantage, seriously, from a tourist and from a business point of view, that we're not part of Schengen?
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Deputy Byrne.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Can I, like the previous speaker, whom I don't always agree with on many issues, support absolutely his comments about Martin Murray's dedication, leadership in developing relations between the Asian countries and the Republic of Ireland. I'm half embarrassed to have to apologise that I won't be here to go to his conference in July, but I'm very conscious of the numbers of conferences that you do organise, and I'm very conscious that you do, and it's got to be said, that you do stand out as a representative of this country working in a phenomenally productive way with all of the agencies, and to concur with Senator Walsh's congratulations that your presentation here today is absolutely fulsome, well thought out. It's the document that we can literally ratify and pass up through the various departments, from education to foreign to trade to employment to various government departments. So I want to thank your organisation for doing such a professional job. To pick up some of the points you did make, which rank are with me insofar as we've been dealing with education here on quite a number of occasions. And there has been questions asked about the Irish higher educational structures here, whether they're competing, whether there's a single umbrella organisation that can sell Ireland Inc.'s incredibly good, valuable educational standards to Asian students. And I understand from a previous presentation, there were some courses. There was a course either been run in Cork or Galway that closed. It was suggested that the Higher Education Authority had pulled the plug. I made some inquiries but didn't get any answers. Maybe you could brief us on, if you're familiar with whatever that course was. It was to do with Asian matters. It is a fact, I think, and you record it here in bullet point 1, and you do recognise that, for example, the religious orders of the Columban Fathers are and have created an educational system in some of these Asian countries that is the envy of many countries in the world. And I particularly know, having been to one of the few countries that I have been to in that region, it was Korea, where the Columban Fathers are recognised as those who created the finest educational structures and institutions for the people of Korea. That clearly indicates a very, very strong potential linkages between not just the religious, but between those who are being educated with a history of the involvement of the Columban Fathers, with educational institutions back home in Ireland, which is the source of the Columban Fathers' work in Korea. So I do take the point very strongly that, we must capitalise on these positive relationships. Again, one wonders, I'm familiar with Brazil, for example, that the Brazilian government has just written off or sanctioned. I think Ireland is going to benefit from 1,000 higher education students under, I think it's called the Science Without Borders programme. So we are going to, somebody has collectively negotiated with the Brazilians for 1,000 high-level students to come to Ireland under a programme. And I know other countries do it. I know Saudi Arabia, for example, King Abdullah sends out students. So where are we missing out in Asia? My understanding would be that we have a great working relationship. For example, would it be Malaysian students and the Royal College of Surgeons in Stephen's Green? There seems to be very strong relations with some Asian countries. I mean, I can only tell from the physical presentation of those, mainly women, that I suspect they might come from Malaysia. But you might tell me, is that another area that we can develop in the health field? To conclude, you drew comparisons between the richest, the richest countries and the poorest countries. Now, I, for some reason, emotionally, I'm very attached to a country called Laos, and I've never been there, but I've been to Vietnam. But I understand that there was a programme being initiated between the Dublin Institute of Technology and Laos, which is very poor, one of the poorest countries, as you've recorded, who do need this infrastructure. The relationship was to be around the hospitality industry, catering, managing of hotels, the tourism area, which is an area that we are supreme leaders, I would say, in the field. The tragedy, I think, through the grapevine is that that deal is collapsing, or maybe the government is not pushing it, that their government is not pushing it as well. If there's any truth in that, if it could be saved, because Laos does need this relationship with Ireland. It does need, it can compete clearly on tourism, etc. Has the potential to compete with neighbouring countries, including Vietnam. But Vietnam is progressing at such a magnificent rate. And just on Vietnam, we did entertain a very high-ranking, high-level number of Vietnamese ministers and that who have come to Ireland to study free trade, Shannon, and other areas of governance. So we do have some relationships there. So can I conclude by saying, how do you equate the difficulties we have to experience because of the language issue? Our education institutions are just not, I would imagine, catering adequately with educating the students in the languages that is required. And to conclude finally, because I have personal experience of it, you mentioned, I think it was bullet point 8, about internships or relationships. I have a very happy experience of Dublin City Council, which, as you know, is twinned with Beijing, that they sent from the Mayor's office, the local authority in Beijing, to Dublin City Council, 3 Chinese, 2 women and a man, on 6-month internship, and they work specifically in relevant areas, and I'm not quite sure whether Dublin City Council reciprocated, but it was a very clear insight into the work that these 3 Chinese from the Mayor's office was able to do, and I think your point is very well taken, that we should extend these internship relationship with a vast range of other public bodies and governmental institutions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Deputy O'Snowick.
Similar to the other deputies, I want to congratulate on a very good report and seemingly very, very practical recommendations. There's 12 kind of in the cheat sheet, if you want, kind of where they're explained in greater detail inside. And as I mentioned, they are practical. Kind of, it was the first time I've heard them. My Deputy Crowe would have been here before when you presented. So one of the questions is, because they're so practical, why is there a delay? Why isn't it happening? Because if as set out, kind of, I think that if you go through each of the points, there is a logic behind each one. In some ways, there's a value for money nearly, without putting a cost on them, outlined in the case that you've made. Are you experiencing bureaucratic delay, political delay, or is it just kind of that sometimes on an international field, kind of things move slowly? In relation to one of the areas that has been mentioned by yourself and others, the whole aspect of educational exchanges and that, and I know of some students who have benefit from such exchanges. I've met them here and I've met them abroad. There is concern, I know, among some who travel to Ireland now, given kind of the bad reputation that is now starting to emerge of foreign languages schools and that. And in some ways, some of the countries are loath to make any new arrangements or deals with or agreements with universities or with that until such time as that we sort out our own issues around kind of the qualification and the standardisation of such schools and some type of protection, some type of insurance policy to protect those who are then left kind of home and dry in many ways. And it's a type of the counsellor service and that you're recommending is then called on to deliver and sometimes regretfully kind of put students who have paid a fortune to get here back home again. And that creates, because that's one of the other questions I have, is one of the best recommendations, not just in terms of the area that you're concerned about, but other areas, is the best recommendation we've always had is the experience people have when they come to Ireland. If you have a good experience, you will go home to your home country and brag about it. If you have a bad experience, it can do untold damage and takes sometimes years to correct. So how can we enhance the experience of travellers from that region who arrive in Ireland, the students and the business people, because that's a challenge in itself. You mentioned connectivity, kind of that we don't have direct flights. Well, in some ways, after last week or the week before, we don't control the airlines, but that's a different matter. But we do have quite a number of flights that stop over. There's a huge amount of Irish emigrants, Irish tourists travel to Australia and to New Zealand. And how do we get those who are travelling that far distance to stop over on a greater scale, kind of in kind of the ASEAN countries that they stop in, because there's a number of stops, rather than in some ways going to Abu Dhabi or wherever. I think I stopped in Kuala Lumpur and I enjoyed the experience. That was many years ago. The other one is, in terms of the Philippines, we have a huge number of Filipinos living in Ireland, returning kind of money home because it's a very poor country, operating in our health system, and kind of how do we kind of, in some ways, capitalise on that, and how do they capitalise on it? And do you see any increase or any major progress we can make in relation to that?
Very much indeed, Deputy Durkin.
Chairman, my apologies for my absence there for a short time to keep the other side of the House going as well. I want to thank our witnesses this morning and to compliment them on their promotion of business with the ASEAN countries. I think one is only to glance at that particular publication to realise fully the huge potential that exists. First of all, population, take for instance India and China together, population 2.5 billion. Not million, billion, and rising in terms of productivity, rising in terms of GDP, rising in terms of global importance. So there are huge opportunities that have been availed of already, but there are certainly many thousands of more similar opportunities. An interesting example is the Irish Trailblazers, and I particularly want to make a reference to them, if I might, please. For instance, in relation to Japan, 125 million people, large population, there's no doubt about it. 30,000 GDP per capita, which is reasonable by our standards, comparable to, almost comparable to our standards. But the companies like Glendimplex, who set out there blazing that trail when it wasn't fashionable to do so, is an example to more and many more throughout this country, because it shows what can be done if the application, the willingness, the dedication and the perseverance is there. And I think they have done that very successfully, not only in Japan but all over the globe. And an example is, you know, they have 10,000 employees worldwide. And I was at a presentation last year, I think you may have been at it as well, Mr. Chairman, when the former Chief Executive was being given an award. And I think that if you were to identify a promo that was more positive on behalf of a country, as was presented by Glenn Dimplex on that occasion, I have yet to see it. It was certainly the most impressive that I have ever seen in promoting the country, in promoting the product, in promoting the business acumen of Irish entrepreneurs, and also emphasising the humble beginnings of a company that started in a garage in County Louth and reached international standards in a way which is hugely impressive. So all I want to say is that could I ask that in fact every effort be made to build on the contacts that have already been made, to try to ensure that every Irish company can gain a foothold in those markets, which is hugely beneficial to us in our quest as a nation of